more folks to sign in that registered for today. Uh, I'm Chris Martinez. I'm the Executive Director, Hispanic Contractors of Colorado, and we welcome you to our PPP Loan Forgiveness Application webinar. As part of the many webinars that HCC will be doing uh, through the end of this year in order to, what we hope is help our small businesses and help provide them some educational parts as well as some tidbits and things that help them as we now start hopefully getting out of COVID-19 and getting back into their business as they go. So welcome to everyone. Appreciate your participation today. First, HCC, we always want to thank our platinum members. Our platinum members are those at the highest level of financial contribution to Hispanic contractors and helps us keep our doors open. So we certainly appreciate their support. This is our board of directors, 14 board members. They're all volunteers. They volunteer their time to help set the direction of HCC. As you can see, several from GCs as well as small businesses and some of our public entities as well. Very much a diverse group of folks. This is our mission. Our main mission is to obviously within the construction industry and trying to help our members with that knowledge and connections, and more importantly, being a voice within our industry today for them. Hasn't ever been as important as it is right now in making sure that we have a voice as so many things are happening. As we move into today's webinar on the PPP financial application, forgiveness application, forgot the word forgiveness. We want to welcome our guest speakers today. The first one you're going to hear from is from the Minority Business Office. That's Ulysses Fernandez. Ulysses is an entrepreneur and a former administrator of a nonprofit organization. When I was reading his bio, I thought it was important to mention, well, through his work with entrepreneurial work, he is focused on growing small businesses and diversifying their investment portfolio. So he has a very much interest in small businesses and helping them. So we welcome you to today and appreciate your time spending with us this afternoon. Ulysses.
Thank you for that introduction, Chris. I really appreciate it. And yes, you are correct. I am very passionate about helping small businesses. My family has owned small businesses for many years or has owned. And as that, it's given me really the experience and understanding of the challenges that can come with that, and then also the successes that we experience throughout. So I am very happy to now be a member of the Colorado Minority Business Office and now have this opportunity to share my experience and also the various resources that are available for them. So thank you for having me today. Next slide, please. So today what I would like to begin talking about is really what the Minority Business Office is, and that is really just illustrated through our mission. So MBO is dedicated to supporting small businesses, and primarily small businesses that are owned by veterans, women, or minorities, so that they can navigate and be successful not only in getting certified to be able to work with local, state, or federal government, but then also what comes after that when you get certified. So as you can see here in the slide, we have a team of consultants that focus on the different levels of government to be able to get certified, and then again to be able successful in marketing yourselves and then also selling your service or product to them. And really our core team or staff at the office is our director, which is Rosie McDonough, myself as a program manager, and also Soraya Bromer, who is our program coordinator. So we are a small team, but I do believe that we do a great job in really trying to connect with the community and bring different resources to them. Again, in the 2 years that I have been here, I've really just enjoyed seeing how everybody works together, such as we do with Hispanic contractors. So we're really happy to be part of today's webinar. Next slide, please. So the first thing that I want to talk to you about is the call COVID-19 Small Business Navigator Hotline. This is something that was established early on in the first days when we started experiencing the changes that came with dealing uh, with the pandemic. And what we were trying to accomplish with this is out of the Office of Economic Development and International Trade, which is where the Minority Business Office is housed. And what we put together was a team of experts from the different divisions at OED to be able to answer calls or questions from the small business community throughout the state of Colorado. This hotline is available Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. There's going to be individuals from different divisions that can help small businesses just get a little bit more clarity around the different resources that are available to them, the different offices, state offices, or otherwise that might be able to support them also in their local communities. And the number for the hotline, as you can see on here, is 303-860-5881. And there is also an email on there. I do believe that this is going to be shared with the small businesses that are joining us today. Again, call anytime 8 to 5. I think that this has been a great resource for the small business community in Colorado. At the peak of trying to figure everything out, we were receiving up to 1,000 calls a day. Now that has slowed down a little bit because I think people have now received the information or have applied for some of the resources available. But now, as you know, the reason why we're doing the call today is also to be able to share more about what comes next or what is the next phase going to look like. And us at the Minority Business Office and also at OED do want to be part of that conversation and that solution. So next slide, please. This is one of the ways in which we're trying to accomplish that. At OEDIT, we have really focused on gathering all of the resources that are available throughout the state, and this would be at the federal level by working closely with the SBA, Francis, and all of her team. And you can see a lot of these resources on that link that is at the top, the choosecolorado.com/COVID-19. There is going to be information on there about the different SBA programs, but then also about some of the other links that you see down here regarding unemployment or layoff assistance and how to reach the CDLE. Eviction and rental assistance, we know that a lot of the small businesses are dealing with challenges as to what they can pursue to help facilitate some of the challenges that they may be having there. For those that need student loans, whether it be grace periods or other assistance, trade and travel advisories. We also deal with a lot of businesses who do either do out of state work or even internationally. So we do want to be a support for them on that. And then there is specific resources for industries. But the one that I do want to focus on a little bit more is actually at the top of the screen, the link to alternative sources of funding. This is a list that has been compiled by the team at OEDIT and is finding resources that are maybe some small businesses do not qualify or they did not receive enough assistance through some of the federal programs, but there's something locally that can either help them in the form of a loan, a credit line, or a grant. So those we have put forth quite a bit of an effort to keep this list up to date with resources again throughout the state and then also through local governments. As we move through the presentation, you are going to see some of these links, but we do recommend that small business owners business this alternative sources of funding list, which is actually a Google spreadsheet that gets updated a few times a week with alternative sources, resources that could help them through this time. So next slide, please. And here is some of what I was talking about that will be on that list. And however, on this slide, we sectioned it off really to the different parts of Colorado, looking at the Denver metropolitan area, or again, some of the other corners of the state. But we do recommend that businesses also talk to micro lenders and see what they have available now or what may be coming in the future for them and some of the efforts that they are working on with federal resources or state resources. And then also, as you can see on the others list, there's just different resources that they should be educating themselves on to see if that can support them. That is one of the things that we have really focused on and is sharing with people that education is the most important thing to be able to access as much as possible and to really choose what makes sense for their business. Next slide, please. So again, some of the tips is ask for help, get educated. We are housed again at OEDIT, the Office of Economic Development and National Trade, which is also where the Colorado Small Business Development Center network is housed. And the Small Business Development Center, like the Minority Business Office, offers free consulting. They offer education, they offer trainings for small businesses to really look at the future and how it is that they're going to be able to work through this. Local chambers of commerce, working with the Hispanic Contractors of Colorado, Industry Business Association. So really, again, it's acquiring as many resources as possible to see what fits your needs. The other thing that we really recommend that is very important is contacting your banks, your suppliers. Look at that supply chain. How can you make sure that you are going to be able to stay active through this period? Because as we have seen that there has been many challenges for the supply chains for different industries. So making sure that you're able to sustain that. And then also lenders, maintaining that relationship with them, making sure that you're clear about where you stand in business and what things will look like for you in the future. Next slide, please. So here's how to get a hold of us. As I mentioned earlier, at MBO, we do offer no-cost consulting. That's for businesses that need some support right now if they are applying for the PPP or EIDL or are considering any other support, or now looking at the forgiveness part of that. We do offer services for that, and you are able to call the number that is on your screen, 303-860-5881, or you can also email our team member, Soraya Bromer, who will be able to put you in touch with one of our consultants. That information is also available on our website, and we do recommend visiting that so that you can become a little bit more familiar with all of the different resources that MBO has. And then again, the Colorado SBDC network, the OEDIT website, and then of course, the SBA website, where you will be able to stay most up to date with the information on PPP loans or any other resources that they may have for you. So at any time, feel free to reach out to us. We are here as a resource, and we want to help you continue to be successful in the work that you do. So that is all that I have for now. So Francis, I'll let her take over from here.
Ulysses, I have a question for you.
Yes.
Adams County just came out this week with a grant for COVID-19. I'm sure you'll be adding that onto your list of resources as well. Can they access that directly to the MBO office, or do they need to go directly to Adams County?
So that's a great question, Chris. This is actually the second time that Adams County has a grant. I believe that the first time that they offered this, it was only open for about half a day because of the volume, the demand for support that they were expecting. So we are able to support the business in sharing information about the grant or how to prepare their financials or any other information that they might need to submit when they apply. But really, as with Adams County and the other lists of alternative sources of funding, each of the entities that are listed on there are going to be the ones that will be reviewing the application and that will have any and all answers that small businesses may have. But we can also help you just get in touch with the right person. If we do know somebody at their office, we can make those introductions to facilitate.
Great, wonderful. And just another thing, here at HCC, we do put out a newsletter every week. And so as you have updates, we'd be happy to put them in our newsletter. We usually get the information by Wednesday and it goes out on Thursday.
Wonderful. Well, we'll share our newsletter with you as well so that you can see everything that we're sending out to the community, and then anything that's specific that we believe will help support your members. So.
Thank you. And for everybody else, we will have a Q&A at the end. If you have questions, you could ask both Ulysses and Francis, who's coming up, on any of items, and you also use the chat room if you would like to. I'd like to now introduce Francis Padilla. Francis was named the District Director for the Colorado District Office in January 2017 as Director of the Chief Executive Officer responsible for directing the expansion and delivery of the Small Business Association various loans and business training services throughout the state of Colorado. Welcome, Francis.
Thank you so much, Chris and HCC. Thank you for having us on today and giving us this opportunity to follow up from the earlier sessions and provide you some updates on SBA programs, materials, and resources that are related to COVID-19 as they currently stand. And I say as they currently stand because we know that since the inception of all of our programs, nobody really expected the pandemic and the crisis to be at the level that it is. So it seems that we're often updating different rules and guidance, and that's why we really like to be on these sessions so that we can make sure that you guys have good, solid, actionable information at the time that it's being released. On the webinar today, we have two of our Colorado District Office representatives that I would like you to know. First will be David Benavides. He's our Lender Relations Specialist, and he's also our liaison to the Colorado Small Business Development Center Network. And he's going to be talking about EIDL today, so he'll be a presenter a little bit later. But we have a new member of our team, Sol Ibarra. She is our new Outreach and Marketing Specialist in our office, and I'm going to ask her just to unmute herself for a second and introduce herself.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be part of the SBA, and I'm looking forward to continuing to do what the SBA has done in the past and just grow and learn more about the small business community.
Great, thank you so much, Sol. She is a sweetheart and extremely experienced, having worked with small businesses and in small businesses, and then also as a service provider for a number of years. And she's also extremely bilingual. So if we ever have needs for outreach services in Spanish, please do contact our office and we'll make sure that we engage. Today I'm going to start by covering a few points on some SBA COVID incentives that you may not have been aware of. I know we talk a lot about EIDL and PPP, but there are other provisions that happened even pre-CARES Act and after the CARES Act that you may not have taken advantage of or you may not know about, so I want to make sure that you have that information today. David will then cover EIDL, and then I'll finish up with PPP. So a little bit about small business debt relief that was offered by SBA. So even pre-CARES Act, if you already had an SBA loan from another disaster period, this is not including the economic injury associated with COVID-19, but prior physical disaster or another EIDL disaster, the SBA administrator early on made the decision to provide some debt relief and deferred payments on those SBA disaster loans for a period of 12 months. So this actually happened automatically. It was administratively done. Nobody needed to apply. They didn't need to contact us. It's just the payments are automatically deferred right now. So if you are a disaster client, like maybe from Boulder, the Boulder situation, or from some other kind of physical disaster, you should not be making payments on your deferred SBA disaster loans at this point. Not again until maybe next March or next April, depending on when those payments started. Also under the CARES Act, in order to give you a little bit of relief and maybe some working capital to concentrate on either other bills or just taking care of yourself and your family with your resources. The current 7A Community Advantage 504 and SBA microloan borrowers were relieved of the obligation to pay principal, interest, and some fees associated with loans that were in regular servicing status. So that means they were in good standing by our account. And what we're doing is for a 6-month period, beginning with the first payment due on the loan after the late March payment, we are making those payments on behalf. This is of the borrowers. This is not a deferment. It's actually we're making your payments for you for a period of 6 months. So after we kind of dealt with the administrative side of that, lenders subsequently submitted their documentation to us, and now we're continuing to make those payments on behalf of existing borrowers. One thing that people don't know is that this debt relief may also apply to new SBA loans. We're talking non-PPP or non-EIDL loans that are closed and dispersed through September 27th, 2020. So if you actually enter into a regular SBA loan and you can close it, it's fully dispersed and it's in good standing, then you too can take advantage of some of that debt relief for a period of 6 months. Another thing that happened under the CARES Act is that we changed some of the parameters temporarily to our SBA Express program. So if you're looking for capital for uses outside of what the PPP and the EIDL programs allow, I just want to make sure that you know that SBA's regular financing programs are still available. So that's 7A 504, Community Advantage, microloans, and an Express. And the way that Express changed under the CARES Act is by increasing the maximum loan amount. So it's temporarily increased from the threshold of $350,000 to actually $1 million through December 31st, 2020. The uses of proceeds are typically the same as a standard 7A, except most clients choose to use this particular product for revolving lines of credit. Loan term is up to 7 years with an option to revolve. Turnaround times are usually from lenders can be pretty quick. It really depends on their own internal approvals. Again, this is a guaranteed loan program. It's not a direct loan program that we're administering ourselves. It's through our distribution of lenders. I have a list of SBA Express lenders that can do loans in Colorado. We'll make sure that you have that if you're interested. And again, as I mentioned, that 6 months of small business debt relief payments authorized in the CARES Act would also apply for this SBA Express program as long as that loan is dispersed and it's in regular servicing status. Another thing that happened due to the CARES Act is in efforts to reach more underserved communities, the SBA is now providing information and materials in languages other than English to help small business owners navigate through all of our resources. So presently, these materials are available in 17 different languages, and we're going to be translating more and posting periodically to our webpage. And of course, we need to revise any materials to reflect the changes that happened under the recently passed Flexibility Act. But if you want to find this information and you want to share this widely, you can find it at sba.gov. We have a banner, COVID-19 banner, that's on the top of our webpage. You just click on the banner and then scroll down to the information in the other languages section, and you'll find all of the collateral material in the various languages. So before I talk about PPP, I want to pass this over to David, and he can give you some updates on EIDL. David?
Thank you, Francis, and I'd like to thank the Hispanic Contractors of Colorado for having me here today. And I will share right off that I really don't have anything today, but no, I'm kidding. Since we have this up on the screen, I will kind of go through it and kind of explain what we have sitting here that everybody can look at. We have the current numbers up to date as of the dates on there that show the amount of money that has come out into Colorado through the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program. And as you see, is the EIDL advance, we have over 62,000 loans that have been funded with over $198 million out there. So the advance program, we see businesses are getting and are using for their operating expenses, which is really, really good because we knew they needed that. On the loan side itself, you'll see there are 14,000 plus loans that have been funded, and that amounts to that $1 billion. And so we know the money is getting out there through this program. I know that a lot of business owners are kind of looking at these numbers right now saying, hey, well, where's mine? We also acknowledge the fact that there are a lot of loans in queue that we are currently processing. These loans are actual economic injury. They're actually disaster loans. So we are underwriting them like we normally would any disaster loan that we would normally process. So we know that the time is a little bit annoying for some people, for some borrowers. But first off, we appreciate everybody's patience in allowing us to underwrite these loans and work with you. I will share that I know there were some people who will tell us they missed the EIDL advance. If you came in and you applied for one of the EIDL loans in the early stages, and the easiest way to figure that out is look at your loan number. If it starts with a 2, then you can go back into the portal and you can refresh your information. Refreshing your information just as easy as just by going in and just completing the application form itself again. And that'll refresh your application. You won't lose your place in line because as we know, these are processed as we got them in. But it'll also make you eligible for the advance itself. Keep in mind, though, any advance that you get, if you happen to do the EIDL and the PPP and you take the advance, just keep in mind that EIDL advance will be taken out of the forgiveness side of the PPP, which I know Francis will cover in a bit. For those people in queue and are waiting and have questions as to where I am in line and such, I mean, you can ask those. Again, I appreciate your patience in the processing, but the information at the bottom has the telephone number to the Disaster Assistance Center, and it also has the email address. If you have questions about your disaster loan, the other part of it is appreciate the patience, but the other part is we appreciate the fact that everybody's reactive to the Disaster Center when they ask for more information. I know that as they're getting underwritten, borrowers are getting emails saying, hey, can you submit this or can you submit that? And we appreciate the fact that everybody's responsive to it and the fact that they're responsive very, very quickly, because that not only helps our underwriters complete the loan process, but also helps you as a borrower get that loan completed so that the proceeds can get funded to you. But if you have questions about your EIDL loan or where you're sitting at, or any information or additional requests that the underwriters have, the information's here on the screen. Please feel free to reach out. If you need assistance with the process on that as well, I'm available. You can reach out to me, but I will then connect you with the disaster center and we can work through this together. But again, appreciate everybody's patience with the EIDL advance. And as you can see, the numbers are there. They are getting funded. They are getting out there, which is helping small businesses all across Colorado. And I'll leave it to Francis now.
Thank you so much, David. And we will take questions at the end, as Chris said. So I know there's probably some burning questions about EIDL, but just happy to answer them the best that we can. I do want to emphasize one point about EIDL, and that is that this program is unilaterally administered by our Office of Disaster Assistance. And so unfortunately, we do not have access to their systems in district offices. So we cannot check statuses. But if you have something that's completely stuck, or if you have a question that really kind of borders on, I've been waiting for X amount of time, not a reasonable amount of time, please do let us know, and we'll try through our other protocols to try to figure out where you're stuck. So next I want to talk a little bit about PPP. Next slide. I wanted to present this screen for you so that you could have it in perpetuity, and of course all of the hyperlinks do work. So this is a little bit about the governance and the guidance and the resources that are available to you to read more about PPP, or as I stated in the beginning, all of our programs seem to be incredibly fluid. So every time we update an FAQ or anytime we have an interim rule that is released, you can find that information at www.sba.gov/PPP. It will be posted both on the SBA website and also on the Treasury website, because this is a joint program administered by both agencies, but this is a good place to start. Our SBA website, as I mentioned before, does have a COVID-19 banner that just sits and rests on that page. So if you're looking for more information that's outside of PPP, maybe you want to look a little bit more on EIDL or some of our other resources, you can go to the SBA website and click on the COVID banner. What I've given you in the middle is a little bit about the actual rules and guidance and the laws themselves that govern PPP. We know the CARES Act, and unless you're kind of living under a rock, you know all about how PPP works and who the eligible applicants are at this point, and then how the loan amounts are calculated. So I think I'm going to spend more time talking about the Flexibility Act and how it changed certain provisions. And I'm going to give you this promise, Chris, to you and your members, that as soon as we have new application forms that reflect the new provisions under the Flexibility Act, we'll be happy to come back on and maybe do a deep dive into the actual application itself. But for now, I'm just going to give you a quick overview. Let me tell you a little bit about PPP progress, as David did under EIDL. So through the second round of funding of PPP nationwide, there have been almost 4.5 million loans totaling over $510 billion made by 5,500 different lenders throughout the whole country. These have been dispersed, covering payroll for millions of jobs and supporting almost every industry. As of the end of June, we in Colorado had almost 100,000 loans, PPP loans, valued over $10.2 billion. And this is for Coloradans that were small businesses, nonprofits, agricultural enterprises. Our average loan size in Colorado is just a little bit over 103,000. And so what we're hoping is, especially after the second round of PPP, where the agency put a greater emphasis on using community or mission-based lenders to try to reach underserved markets and minority businesses, that we're actually actually reaching some of the smaller businesses in Colorado, and so that we can help businesses who have less than 10 employees or who are self-employed or are 1099 contractors. We recognize that the system and the formula isn't perfect, but I think the point is that we're trying to reach as many small businesses as possible. Again, I know it's not breaking news to anyone that the Senate passed the Flexibility Act and it was signed into law at the end of last week. So what I'm going to do today is briefly summarize the key provisions of what was stated in the act, but with a really important disclaimer up front. And that's that, you know, as I said, this PPP program is jointly administered by both SBA and Treasury. So together we have to work through the processes of promulgating the actual rules and guidance to implement the new provisions. And of course, to revise the current forgiveness application. So please excuse my inability to answer the real specific technical questions out there on the who, what, when, where, why, and how. I know mostly the how, until we have that guidance officially in place. But in summary, here's what the Flexibility Act does do. It changed the initial, what we call covered period, under which the loan proceeds can be used, from 8 weeks to 24 weeks. So instead of the covered period ending in June 30th, it would actually be from February 15th of 2020 through December 31st of 2020. So what that does, it has the effect of doing is extending the period for when a business can apply for loan forgiveness as well. Not only when they can use the loan proceeds, but also when they can apply for loan forgiveness. So initially it was from within 6 months of when you utilize your funds. Now it's to within 10 months of the last day of the covered period. So that's before you have to start making interest and principal payments, and that's the deferment period as well to cover that covered period, or the new covered period. Under the new bill, the loan interest and payments of principal and fees will be deferred until the loan is forgiven by the lender. Borrowers can actually use that 24-week period to restore their workforce levels and their wages to pre-pandemic levels required for full forgiveness. I know those of you that may have had a PPP in the first round were kind of biting your fingernails because that 8-week period was coming up really soon. So what this does is actually give you a little bit of breathing room, because some industries haven't been able to fully open and you haven't been able to bring your staff back up, either in terms of your head count or in terms of your dollars in your payroll, so that you can maximize loan forgiveness. So now you have those 24 weeks. If you're a current PPP borrower, you can choose to keep the initial 8-week period. Let's say you went ahead and spent your money and you know you already met the threshold for the 75%. Now it's 60%, but the threshold for that, and you want to go ahead and apply for forgiveness so that you just kind of get this done. You're welcome to go ahead and keep that 8-week period, or you can go ahead and have the extension of the 24-week period. But the covered period can't extend past that 12/31/2020 date. The Act also lowered the requirement to spend the amount on payroll from 75% to 60% in order to maximize that forgiveness. Or I guess a better way of saying that is you may now use up to 40% to cover those eligible overhead expenses. So hopefully this provides some more flexibility to address additional costs and expenses that you have in your business that might be associated with paying interest on a covered mortgage obligation, or paying covered rent obligations, or covering utility payments. It also increased the time to request forgiveness, as I said, from 6 months to 10 months. Again, that's to accommodate the extended period. And it changed the maturity on any loan from 2 years to 5 years. Now that's for new applicants. So if you're a new PPP applicant as of June 5th, you'll automatically get that 5-year period if you have any amount that rolls into a loan. If you're a current PPP borrower, unfortunately, that's not done unilaterally. That has to be a mutual agreement between the lender and the borrower. So we cannot compel a lender to extend your maturity that's already been booked through 5 years, nor can a lender compel you to take a 5-year maturity. But you're more than welcome to have the conversation right now. In fact, I encourage it. If you think that you're going to roll any amount into a loan and you want that 5-year maturity, to start talking to your lenders about that process. We have not formulated any kind of formal guidance for lenders yet on if they have to document the conversation or what they need to gather from you if you want to have the 5-year maturity, or if you're asking to make sure that you have the 24-week covered period. We just assume you'll have the 24-week covered period unless you turn in your forgiveness application now. But if there's any guidance, we'll make sure and follow up and let you know what that looks like if you have to take any action, if you're an existing PPP lender. The interest rate, if there is any loan portion, still remains at 1%. Also, another provision of the Act is that PPP recipients can now qualify to apply for the tax credit to defer payroll taxes. And that was previously prohibited before because it was considered double dipping under the CARES Act. The legislation also now includes 2 new exceptions that allow borrowers to achieve, again, that full PPP loan forgiveness, even if they don't restore their full workforce. So previous guidance we had issued had already allowed borrowers to exclude employees who had turned down your good faith offers to rehire them at the same hours and wages as before the pandemic. But now the new bill allows borrowers to adjust because either you couldn't find qualified employees, the employees turned down the offer to be rehired, or even you were unable to restore your business operations to pre-pandemic levels because of related operating restrictions. So if OSHA has some standard, or if HHS has some standard, or if the CDC has some standard that doesn't allow you to resume operations to take advantage of bringing your workforce back on, then there are ways that you can claim exemptions. Another important note is that there is still a deadline to apply, and applications have to be approved by June 30th, 2020. So what that means for you is if you're looking to apply for PPP now, the lender actually has to have it reviewed, entered, and receive that SBA approval by the end of June 30th. So don't leave anything to chance. Please don't turn in your application on the last day on June 30th because lenders still do have their process. I would say turn in your applications early, get them reviewed, work out any kinks, any tweaks, any documentation that the lender needs, because they'll have to review it and then they'll have to put it into the SBA system and they'll have to get an approval. That's usually pretty fast once the lender puts the number into our system or the application into our system. But again, don't leave that to chance because we cannot approve any new PPP loans after June 30th unless there's some change to the legislation. And in case you're wondering, there are more funds available. There's still over $130 billion that remains for PPP new loans. With that, Chris, I think we'll just stand for questions.
Right. So are there any questions from folks? Any questions? You answered one of the questions on here, is it too late to apply for a PPP loan? And apparently it's not. There's still funds available. Any of the participants have any questions? You could unmute. Go ahead.
So if you've received a PP loan and it covered your payroll, as far as the disaster resource or loan that can be used for, say, rent, if you've exhausted your entire PP loan on payroll, can you apply for the disaster loan to cover other expenses like rent or payments on equipment that you have? So it's
David, you got it, David? Okay.
Yes, as I said, at this point, the idle application portal is closed except for those that are agricultural related. If the portal opens back up, then yes, you can apply for both loans, whether it's the idle and the PPP. And if you exhaust the PPP on payroll, then the idle loan is designed for operating expenses. But if you haven't exhausted the PPP loan on payroll, remember the forgiveness side or the magic number now is 60% to be used for payroll to be eligible for forgiveness. and the rest of that can be used for operating expenses such as rent and the interest payments and utilities, as long as they were existent prior to.
Okay, so the 60/40, if you have all the eligible expenses associated with that PP loan, the chances are you'll have 100% forgiveness.
Well, the eligibility factor for that, if you use the 60 on payroll and the rest on the approved expenses, then it is eligible for the 100%. Now, the entire process and how that is totally calculated, we're still waiting on the actual final calculations.
Okay.
We have a couple of questions that came into the chat room, and anybody who has one, please just feel free to ask. This question is, how does the grant work in relation to the PPP? We received the grant, so how does the math work with the PPP?
The way that works is once you apply for the forgiveness and the amount that forgiveness that you are going to be allowed or given, then any idle advance that you have received will be deducted from that PPP forgiveness, and the difference will be sent to the bank to pay off that portion of the PPP loan. Then whatever the idle advance was will be left there to be converted to the PPP loan. And that's the other part why it's important to, at this point, start looking at negotiating those terms with the bankers. Because if you have an idle advance and a PPP, and you do get the 100% forgiveness on the PPP, that idle advance will be deducted from that PPP forgiveness, and you'll want to definitely discuss those terms with the banker.
If an employee quits voluntarily, how is that being handled?
If an employer quits voluntarily, then the recommendation is that the employee or the employer document that, make sure that they get that either somebody's, if they voluntarily separate, then get that in writing or at least in an email of some sort, so that you maintain that, because that's part of the safe harbor, that if somebody left voluntarily or you offered a position back and they turned it down, then the recommendation at this point is make sure you have full documentation, so that when you apply for the safe harbor part of that side, that you faithfully made those job offers back and they just didn't take them. The key there is documentation.
Will there be changes to the PPP loan forgiveness application?
Now, right now, they are in the process of changing that application, because before it was all set up for the 75%. Now that we've gone down to the 60, plus also the fact that the loan can be extended out to 5 years, they are revising the application, and once that is available, it will appear up on the Treasury and the SBA website. So that's where we'll be able to find those once they are released. And then once they're released as well, we'll get that out as widely broad spread as we possibly can.
So, and I'll, in response to that, I know that I've been trying to read as many of the publications that come out when there are changes. If your offices identify some of the changes, or say that there's changes that just passed Congress, they're going to go into effect or been approved, if you will send us a note, an email or something, then we could do is put that in our newsletter to the link to your site where those changes are.
Absolutely, absolutely. We will definitely keep everybody abreast of any changes, and we will circulate that out as much as we can.
Right.
I have one quick question. If you're successful with the forgiveness of your PP loan, will that income then be taxable?
That I don't know. I know they were putting some items into it, but that's a question for your tax advisor to see how that's going to be done.
Lloyd, this is Frances. I will let you know that the intention of the CARES Act was to make the process tax exempt. IRS subsequently issued a rule that talked a little bit about taxability and having offset expenses, but we have heard from our congressional delegation that they're trying to make sure either by rule or by fix that, that the intent of the CARES Act is honored.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
I have a question. This is Mark. with the MBO. Most of the clients that I've worked with receive their PPP using their Schedule C. They're self-employed. And for forgiveness, the direction I've gotten was that automatically 75% of their loan would be forgiven since they don't have payroll and they don't show payroll. And then they have 25% sort of left over that they need to show through expenses that we've talked about, like utilities and rent. For those individuals, those sole proprietors or self-employed people, are they now able to use the 24-week period to get that 25% forgiven? Do you know?
As I've seen and as we've interpreted, that the period from 8 to 24 weeks is pretty broad across the board. As far as what they're going to need to show the amount used, the 60%, I know with the application process that they're rewriting right now, we're going to work on one for contractors. That will obviously come after they rewrite the one for the normal business owners.
Okay, so there'll be further guidance coming for.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. There'll be further guidance on how independent contractors will ask for forgiveness.
Great.
Francis, I know you talked about the SBA debt relief program.
Mhm.
Can you just go over the highlights of that again one more time? You went quite quickly, and I want to make sure the folks have got that in case they have an SBA loan.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you, Chris, my first language was Spanish. So when I speak in English still today, I speak really fast. So let me tell you a bit about debt relief. All right. If you have a current 7A, 504, Community Advantage, or an SBA micro loan, meaning that you've already taken it out for whatever use, and you're still in good standing, you've been making your payments as agreed, we're not in default status or anything like that, then your lender has submitted your information to SBA, and we're making 6 months of payments of principal and interest on your behalf. So this isn't a deferment. Let's say when this started and you had an outstanding 7A loan, you asked for a deferment because you needed to give yourself a little bit of room. You can still take advantage of it. All you really had to do is go back to your lender and ask to come off the deferment so that they could report your loan to SBA so that you can start getting that 6 months of payments. Let's say, heaven forbid, you still need to go back on deferment after we make your payments for 6 months. You can still do that and go back to your lender and make those arrangements. Just come off of your deferment officially so that we can start making your payments.
Great. Good. That's good information. I'm glad I asked you to repeat it. Any other questions?
Yeah. Hello, this is Victor. I got a quick question. For companies that exhausted their resources on their PPP and they get forgiven, what is after the program? I'm kind of looking ahead a little bit and seeing just what's down the road. What could we be expecting for the SBA to be extending out for people that already went through this program? And if there's an additional support out there, what could we be looking for down the line?
Victor, that's a great question. Really, really appreciate it. You know, I think we're all asking ourselves the same thing. In fact, our administrator and Secretary Mnuchin were in front of the Senate Small Business Committee today, and were asked a very similar question. And of course, the answer is, you know, whatever the lawmakers decide to give us that benefits small businesses, we'll be happy to administer. But I don't think that they've quite rolled out any kind of answer to those questions. And I'm not a partisan person. I'm a career employee. You know, I'm not the lawmaker or the policymaker. I'm kind of the humble implementer at the district office level. But we still do have our regular SBA programs. Now, they don't come with the COVID incentives, but like I mentioned, there's SBA Express and there's still 7A and some of the other programs that we have. And I'm really glad Ulises was on today so he could talk about the repository of other resources that the state of Colorado has been compiling. But I mean, in answer to your question, you know, we stand waiting for the lawmakers of the country to kind of give us something, which we would gratefully administer.
Yeah, thank you, Francis. I mean, I think you did a great job in answering that, as well as what I would add is just all of these different programs that we've seen roll out. It's been changing, you know, week by week, month by month. So that's why when I was talking, I said just vigilant of the different resources that are out there. The list that I share with you, that spreadsheet, it's a great resource. Again, on identifying resources that are local or state. And the state is also working on some programs right now that they're not quite ready for deployment, but they will be in the coming weeks. So like Chris was saying earlier, stay vigilant of those newsletters as well. That will be going out, I'm sure, in the Hispanic Contractors of Colorado newsletter, as it will in the MBO newsletter. It's just staying vigilant, and I think that you will find that the state, local governments, and federal governments will continue to try to work on how it is that we can support small businesses.
One note I have is if anybody that's on the call is rural, or if any of your members live in rural areas, USDA Rural Development has just recently rolled out their COVID-19 incentive programs, and so it might be worth talking to Sally Clark from USDA. So I know one of their programs is actually working capital, and it has a more broad and expensive use than we have under PPP.
All right. Great questions, great dialogue going on. Not that I'm trying to cut it, but our next slide is asking again, are there any questions? If not, I'm going to start the close here. HCC is asking all of our participants to follow us on our social media. As you all know, we're really trying to increase the spreading of the word and information to all small businesses. So if you follow us, like us on our social media, it helps us get the word out to many others. And we're finding great success in doing that. So please do that. If you decide to do that, please use our hashtags as well. There's some on this page, and we will send you the slide deck after today's presentation as well. I'm also going to ask all participants to please complete the survey. We will send you a link to a survey. This survey is important for us to know what types of webinars you would like us to have in the future, what types of education pieces you're looking for, what information you're looking for just in general, so that we can work on trying to put that together and provide that to you and other small businesses through our webinars. So please do the survey when we send that out to you. A couple of other announcements for Hispanic contractors. Our general membership meeting is June 17th. We're going to have Denver International Airport. We'll be there to provide an update. They'll be talking about the gate expansions, both east and west gate expansions. We'll have an official from the airport as well, giving us an update on the monies that they have available for those programs. June 24th, we have another webinar, a different theme, Thriving in the New Normal. This will be a great webinar for folks as they are returning back to work. What is that new normal? What does it look like, and what should we expect? This webinar will be pretty cool, providing that type of insight from somebody's perspective from businesses, what to be looking at forward to. We'll have other webinars. Keep checking our website, hcc-diversityleader.org.com is our website. Please look at our website for information. Look for our newsletter information as well on the site, events coming up. And we thank you once again for joining us. I thank our presenters today. Appreciate your knowledge, your expertise, and willingness to share that with HCC and several of our participants today. Any closing questions? If not, thank you all for attending. Appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.